I'm Heidi O'Leary. I'm the superintendent of MSAD75, and I'd like to welcome you to our second community forum for our exciting new master plan. This time tonight and the next meeting in November is your dedicated space to actively engage in shaping the future of our community. We encourage everyone, residents, business owners, and local stakeholders to dive into this discussion, share your unique insights, provide feedback on proposals, and ask questions about the planning process. Your input is extremely vital in this situation. It will directly inform the final plan and help us create a shared vision that benefits us all, including our students. So let's collaborate to build a plan and for the future of all of our students. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to Stephen Frazier and Lisa Swain. They are from Harriman Associates, and they are going to be walking us through the information that we're going to receive tonight. So if you have questions, we have a mic. We can hand you the mic. We are on Zoom, so our community can also see us, but welcome, and thank you for coming out on this rainy evening. So here we go.
All right, thank you, Heidi, for that introduction. Can you guys hear me okay? Awesome, thank you. My name is Lisa Salwin. I am a principal and architect at Harriman. I lead our pre-K through 12 studio. Steve Frazier here is a project manager and senior architect. We've had the distinct pleasure of working with the district on the process of developing a master plan. And as Heidi said, community feedback is vital. There's going to be several instances tonight where you're going to provide us feedback. We've asked in the last forum for feedback. We're going to ask similar questions tonight that we did the first one, and then we're going to build upon that and do some engagement sessions with everybody that's here. So I'm going to start off by going over our agenda. We're going to overview the facility needs, the program needs. And so thinking about facility, essentially that is the vessel to which we are all in, right? The program needs are those things to which the district is providing to the students for their education, and the facility needs to support those. And so we're looking at what the needs are now, but also into the future. So trying to create that long-term plan. We have come up with draft options, and I will emphasize draft options. These are for reaction. These are the things that we have started to put together to say, okay, based on the data that we have collected as architects and engineers going through these buildings, as talking to the leadership in regards to program, here is the themes that we're seeing for a possible path into the future. Tonight, we're going to ask for your reactions to those. Considerations is what we're looking for. Sometimes we call these pros and cons, but a pro to one person could be very well a con to another. So we really want to understand your considerations and things you want us all to think about as we're looking at these options. And then we're going to ask for a non-binding just poll of kind of your prioritization of those options. So jumping right in to this engagement session, those that were with us at the last forum, we had asked for your input on the prioritization of priorities for this overall study. These are 6 of the priorities that we've heard come through this process. Some may have already weighed in. We ask you to weigh in again. We're trying to get as many community members to respond to this so we can get a pulse on what are those driving priorities. If anybody has a smart device or a computer with them, or if you don't and you need one, we can let you use ours. But on the next slide, there's going to be a QR code for you to use and a website to go to. And we want you to look at these and say, okay, out of all of these, what is the highest priority, the second, third, fourth, so on and so forth. And oops, I just went too far. Here we go. Here's the QR code or slido.com. And you type in this number, and then you select them in order. So 1 being the highest, 2 being the second highest, so on and so forth. Or you can press on it and slide it to the top of, there's a little box at the top you can put it in, and the order to which you put those in is how it will start to prioritize. We ask that you pick all 6 so we can see how they prioritize against each other. And what this will do is it will give us, it's all unanimous. Nobody knows who is putting this information in, but you can see in real time, somebody has entered, 2 people have entered. So you start to see where this group here tonight starts to prioritize some of these. And we can look at other groups that we've asked and start to kind of see themes across the board as to what the priorities are. So we already have 6 folks, which is just great. Lots of good engagement. All of those that are online too, please enter your priorities as well. This is a great way to be able to work with those that are attending in person as well as remotely. And we can start to really see that as of right now, there is a clear front runner that safety and security needs to be the highest priority in the plan moving forward. And these numbers are going to continue to jump around here. We're going to give folks a couple minutes to enter this. But it allows us to really, as we're looking at these options, considerations, making sure that whatever moves forward, we've addressed those top priorities and thought about different plans that approach them in different priority orders. So right now we have 28 participants that have put their information in, and no rush, keep going if you're still working on it, 29. And right now we have safety and security as the highest priority, followed by, and it's safety and security is way out there. The next 2 are pretty close together, energy efficiency and minimize cost impact, and followed by maintain the number of existing schools, traffic mitigation, and reduce the number of existing schools to save costs. Again, these are going to continue to ebb and flow. We will look at the results at the end of the presentation, and we'll probably leave it up even for an hour or so after. So if you have friends that aren't here and you want them to weigh in, by all means, please send them this link. The goal is to get as much public feedback as possible. So this is the first thing that we're going to ask for feedback. The next slide is really open-ended. And so it's going to be more of just typing in your answers, again, anonymous. We're not tracking who gives the input. We're just trying to figure out where the general community is at. But I'm loving how many people we're seeing respond. We already have 40 folks that have responded to this. So this is great. I'm going to jump to the next slide, which may change what you see on your phone in regards to the QR code. The next question, as I flipped over now, is going, and you can go back and enter the data later, is essentially what questions or considerations would you like to share? So open-ended, what are just some things that you would like to share with the group that is working on this master plan that we keep in mind as we move forward? And we have a list from the last meeting. We have not lost that list. We have that summarized. We will add these considerations to that. But this is a process. I don't want anyone to think that, you know, we go walk the buildings and all of a sudden we know exactly what's going to happen. This is a very iterative process. And it's important that it is iterative so that we can make sure that we collect all the data to really enforce what is the best direction for your community, because the best direction for your community is going to be different than what the best direction maybe is for your neighboring communities. So I'm just going to read a couple of these as they're coming in. Let me just hide this. All right. One of them is bus transportation for children. And one of the questions is, will the QR code with the 6 considerations be sent out to all parents? I think that's referring to the priorities. I believe we've sent, the intention is to be able to post this so all folks can weigh in. Expenses associated with long-term maintenance, ensuring long-term financial health, equitable access to quality resources across schools. So lots of great feedback coming in. Continue to put this in. I'm not going to sit here and read all of this, but this is a great place for you to keep putting this information. It should stay up as I click to the next slide. If it doesn't, we will send out the QR code for you to get back in and be able to enter that information. All right, overview of facility needs. So Harriman is an architecture and engineering firm. We were founded about 155 years ago in Auburn, and we have all engineering in-house. So essentially what we do is we come to the schools as a group and we walk the schools to identify the needs, from civil to building envelope to interiors to mechanical, electrical, all of the engineering trades. And what we do is we have a report that we've put together that identifies things that we see that need to be addressed in different increments of time. Some of them we may call critical needs, and that means it needs to be addressed in the next 0 to 3 years. It's something that is inevitably needing to be addressed. Some of these things may be, 3 to 10 years. Essentially, they are nearing the end of their useful life, or they're at a condition to where you need to start planning for their replacement. And then there are going to be things that are beyond that. And so what we do is we have a detailed report that identifies what we saw, images of what we saw, and recommendations. And then we put together what we call a heat map. And essentially what this is a quick way for you to understand how these buildings compare to one another in regards to need. And then we also do a quick takeoff on the age of some of those facilities. So this is going to be a very high level. There's a very detailed report. I think when I sent it to Sean, his first words were, "This is overwhelming." It's a lot of information, but it's thorough and detailed so that you guys have the data you need to move forward. So these are the facilities that we were tasked with looking at. All of you are probably very familiar with the facilities within the portfolio, but if you're not, these are the ones that we were asked to look at. So just to kind of put into context your facilities and the age of those original facilities. The chart you see on the left-hand side lists all of those facilities and the year to which they were built and the age that those facilities are today. And next to it, you'll see from the National Center for Education Statistics, some data that they provide for us to use as, I would say, a benchmark. This does not mean that, it applies across the board, but in general, when a school is 20 to 30 years old, you're going to see frequent replacement of equipment needed. And the reason being, if you think about your house, your roof probably has a 30-year warranty. 30 years is, or maybe not the warranty, but a 30-year age. So generally, that roof is replaced within the 30 years. Same with mechanical equipment, same with a lot of things. After a certain time period, they're at the end of their useful life and need to be replaced. Between 30 and 40 years old, the original equipment should have been replaced, including the roof and electrical equipment. After 40 years, a school building begins rapid deterioration. And after 60 years, most, and I will say not all, most schools are abandoned according to the National Center for Education Statistics. Now, we just put this here so that you have that framework, understanding there are a lot of schools that continue to invest in the original infrastructure and continue its life. But sometimes with older facilities, it can get more expensive and more challenging to be able to bring them up to current codes. So right now, you have 2 schools that are 69 years old, so almost over 70 years old, and 4 buildings that are over 70 years old in your portfolio. There's a lot of information on one slide, but essentially what this is showing is the heat map I was talking about. And so what it does is it looks at every school across and facility we were asked to look at is across the top. And this PDF, I believe, will be available on the website if people want to zoom in and be able to see this better. But essentially, it's the name of the building across the top, and down the left-hand column, you're seeing site civil systems, ADA compliance, code compliance, safety and security, so on and so forth, all of the different things that we looked at as we walked through these buildings. We have a rating legend. So blue is excellent, which means new or like new condition, maintain item, no issues or expected failures to report. And I will say that this heat map is an overall summary of that building, understanding there may be nuances that will be detailed in the report saying, yes, it might be excellent, but there might be a couple things in there that might be good or fair. But in general, the majority of them were excellent. Good means good condition, maintain no reported issues or concerns. Fair, average wear for building age, continue to maintain. Poor, which is the orange, worn for use / end of expected life cycle met. Red, critical, extremely worn or damaged, replacement, repair, or attention immediately necessary. And then the gray is not applicable. So sometimes these things are not applicable. within the different schools. But what this allows you to quickly see is, no surprise here, your school in the best condition is the school here. It's the newest. So Mount Arrett High School has a lot of blues and greens. But then you start to look at where are those schools that we start to have pretty much this orange and red the majority of the time. And one of those that really jumps out is obviously Building 376. But also Williams Cone School is another one where you start to see a lot of those. So this gives you a general idea as to the condition of those buildings. And that just means that you're going to have to spend money to replace a bunch of things in these schools, maintain these schools, and continue to allow them to service the students and the staff. Anything you wanted to add, Steve, on this?
If you go back to the slide of the ages,
Yeah.
there's a note on the bottom that says Bodenham average age is 50 and Harpswell is 46. And that's because in both of those facilities, there's the original part of the building that's at the center of the school, which is the oldest part. And then there are newer wings on either side. So we put that in just to acknowledge the fact that it's not the whole building that's old, but those are the average ages.
Thank you, Steve. All right. Now we're going to do an overview of the program needs. So we met with the leadership in every building, and we came up with a dashboard for programming. So we took a lot of information that we were given and tried to distill it down into themes. And we identified key themes and what we're calling missing program spaces. So what this is showing you is that in Bowdoin Central School, the key themes, security features such as intercom, indoor and outdoor, additional cameras, playground fencing. Insufficient storage was reported, and there was reported that the pre-K classrooms were undersized. Missing spaces, storage is what came up mostly in the school, and there's about 196 students in the school right now. Then we move on to Bodenham Community School. Adequate space needed for the arts, spaces to support collaboration. And we heard this a lot, and that's one of the big changes that we've seen in schools over time, is the change in education is to where preparing students for the 21st century and future-ready schools is there is a different way that the staff is administering education. It's no longer just in one classroom. There's a lot more collaboration. There's a lot more group work. There's a lot more critical thinking, communication, in different types of spaces are needed, and a lot more flexibility is needed in order to do that. So that's a lot of what we're seeing in these spaces for collaboration. Commitment to keeping kids on site for special education programming, and single user and staff restrooms. If I had $1 for every time we heard there were not enough staff restrooms in a school, I'd be very rich. So it's definitely something we have to look at. Missing program spaces, music classroom, desire to add pre-K, teacher collaboration space, single user restrooms, staff bathrooms, kitchen with stove for the functional life skills program. So that's a special education program that's teaching life skills to students. Lack of storage, including for large items like furniture, stage sets, et cetera, and then insufficient parking on site. Those are the things that were reported to us. Harpswell Community School, we are seeing that larger class sizes may result in insufficient space. Classrooms 1 through 5 are not ADA accessible. And you will remember on that heat map, that was a pretty big thing that we noted. A lot of schools, a lot of ADA things were not in compliance across the board. Additional space needed for specialists. So there are more specialists and special education in schools today than when the schools were originally built. So having adequate and appropriate spaces for those educators and programs. And then multi-purpose room storage needs. Those were the themes, and the missing spaces. Let's see. I think I already read that one. Classrooms 1 through 5, not ADA. PT does not have a space. OT and behavior strategists share a space. Psychologist does not have a designated space when they're on site. Principal office is shared with conference and storage room and multi-purpose space. So a lot of sharing of spaces in that school. And then Williams Cone, the themes, safety and security concerns, storage, lack of staff restrooms, single user restrooms, and need improved and dedicated specialist spaces. So you're already seeing on this slide alone, safety and security as a theme, additional spaces for different programs, adequately sized space, storage are all concerns as well as restrooms. At Williams Cone, you're missing the dedicated spaces for speech and OT, which is occupational therapy, quiet rooms for older kids, appropriate social worker office, single user restrooms for staff and students, separation of kiln in the art room, and then PE teacher office is currently in a storage room, and storage, the behavior strategist stores things in a server room, library, etc. So that's a quick snapshot, and you can see the student enrollment at the bottom of those 4 buildings. And then here are 3 more. So moving on to Woodside Elementary, the key themes: additional storage needed, maintenance needs regarding paint finishes, moisture fireproofing, drainage issues outside the building, missing program spaces, a cooking kitchen for the special education program, separation of server for better space utilization and storage. Mount Ararat Middle School, key themes: safety and security, operable walls need to be replaced, updates needed to finishes and equipment, and HVAC, such as heating, ventilation, and air conditioning issues. Missing spaces, bathrooms in the functional life skills room. So a lot of those programs have a bathroom in their space because those students tend to stay within that space. Paved ambulance access for the nurse, and admin conference room is too small to accommodate IEP meetings, which are individual education plan meetings. Mount Ararat High School, even though it's relatively new, there were things that were identified. So desire for industrial art shop space or building for electives, plumbing, odor issues at the washer dryer locations, and traffic backup at parent drop-off. And the missing spaces, traditional industrial arts shop space, as well as the building barn for niche electives. And then on the next slide are sort of more of the, I'll call them miscellaneous buildings. We have adult education, special services, superintendent office, and the transportation building. So these are a little bit different than the school buildings that we were talking about, but we identified the key themes and missing programs here. So at the adult ed, updated classroom technology, updated accessible restrooms, additional program space, and updated finishes. They're missing general lack of program space in the facility and ADA single user gender neutral bathrooms. Special services, they need improved HVAC, updated restrooms, and exterior fencing, lockdown feature, and PA system desired. So that's all pertaining to safety and security. And then missing spaces, none were reported. Superintendent's office, better space utilization needed in multiple areas, additional storage needed, more defined assistant spaces, and improved signage and wayfinding on site so people know where they're going. Missing spaces, more defined assistant spaces, reception outside superintendent's office, and improved storage. And last but not least is the transportation building. Key themes: garage and site are generally too small. Restrooms are very small and not accessible. They need adequate parts storage, and garage lacks exhaust system. Missing programs are the accessible bathrooms, adequate parts storage, and the garage is generally too shallow to fit the buses and maintenance items, and maintain them, I should say. Okay, so that was an overview of the programs. That kind of gives you a quick snapshot of what we're hearing are some of the deficiencies in the programming. And so next we're going to roll into the options that we've started to generate for the master plan. And again, I'm going to emphasize these are drafts. This is a first pass. These are meant for reactions and feedback. The options consider several renovations and reconfiguration options between the 5 elementary schools in the district. In addition to this work, there remains short-term and long-term renovation work required at other district buildings, including the high school, middle school, superintendent's office, and adult ed, and transportation building. And essentially saying that building 376 should be abated and torn down. So the project, we're going to quickly go over the project goals that led to these options. So these were the goals from the beginning of the project. The thorough analysis determined useful lifespan, which we went over. This needs to be authentic and realistic. Overall, this is going to become a financial tool to help the district plan for the future. So we will have things that you can tackle in the short term, but then that long-term plan, it's logical and organized. Help answer questions with a rational approach, optimization of buildings for students, and provide options and impact on taxpayers. Everybody always wants to know, well, what are things going to cost? Until we kind of go through this process, we don't know. At the end, we will share what those are, but that is not this meeting tonight. Programming themes, we kind of took the overall themes that we heard as to what we just shared with you tonight. Really safety and security, which everybody here, majority of you put that as your highest one. Improved and additional specialist space, adequate size program space, collaboration spaces, more storage, and staff and single user restrooms. So were the majority of the themes that we heard across the board. All right, so the draft options, I'm gonna maybe have you, Steve, kind of take us through some of these, and we're gonna walk through what they are. The first one is not an actual option, but it's this idea of short-term maintenance that he's going to explain. And then there is a board over here that we'll go through. But Steve, do you want to kind of walk through
Sure.
the options?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the short-term maintenance items are those 0 to 3 year maintenance items that we need to do on all of the facilities. They don't address any program items. So needing a bathroom or needing a larger classroom or a breakout space, the maintenance items don't address that. It's addressing mechanical systems, electrical systems like that. Considerations for short-term maintenance is potential lower upfront costs, not doing some major projects. You're just doing maintenance. Obviously, it's lower. It's a short-term solution. It's CIP, which is capital improvement projects. They're not the 20-year plan. It keeps the 3 antiquated schools. And when we say the 3 antiquated schools, it's really Bowdenham, Harpswell, and Williams-Cone are the 3 oldest facilities in the portfolio. Does not address the programmatic needs, does not fully address the safety and security concerns, does not improve or provide additional specialist spaces, mostly are those for the special ed needs today, does not provide adequately sized program spaces, especially for pre-K and arts is where we see the lack of space for those, does not provide additional collaboration spaces, and that's for the 20th century learning, does not provide more storage space, and does not provide additional staff or single user restrooms.
So keep in mind, this is the part where we ask that we need to provide a short term. And so this would be more of this short term, and what we're asking for feedback on are going to be the next options we go over, B1 through E2, I believe it is, because we're really looking at what is the long-term solution. And that's really what we want feedback on tonight. So going to the next slide, maybe if it will go. There we go.
There you go. So we've got 5 elementary schools in the portfolio. We've told you the 3 worst ones are Bowdenham, Harpswell, and Williams-Cone. And Bowden and Woodside are both much newer, much better shape. So with that consideration, we've looked at, well, what are our options here? Option B is to do major renovations at those 3 worst schools, Bowdenham, Harpswell, Williams-Cone, make all the repairs and some of the programmatic changes that we can do with those repairs to keep all of those buildings online for an extended period of time. So it's addressing major issues at the older buildings, but it does not offer benefits of consolidation. So financially, it may be a better model to eliminate some of the schools in the portfolio, bring it from 5 to 4 or 3. And like Lisa said before, that's a pro or a con, depends on who you talk to. Addresses some of the programmatic issues of the 3 renovated schools, but depending on what's being done in there, limits our ability to kind of affect some of the bigger programmatic needs, especially where you need an addition. Option B is these kind of options, B1, B2, B3, are just a little variations on the same theme. So major renovations at Bowdenham and Harpswell And looking at Williams Cone is probably the worst building in the whole portfolio. So looking at William Cone, remove the cone portion, which is the round piece. And by doing that, it opens up a few different options. The site in that school is very tight. There's not much space for separate bus and parent drop-off. So you take the worst part of the building off, improve the site conditions, and replace that portion of the building out in the back more where the fields are. So this addresses major issues at the older building, replaces the cone building, does not offer benefits of consolidation because you still have 5 schools, and addresses some of the programmatic issues at the 3 renovated schools. And option 3, keeping with the same theme, is major renovations at Bodenham and Harpswell, and construct new school entirely to replace William Cone. That may be on that site, but more likely it would have to be on a different site. That site in itself is difficult because there's one access to it through a tight residential neighborhood. And if we built a new building, it'd be way on the back side of the site. So that alone may be worth considering a separate site. So these considerations addresses the major issues at the older buildings, replaces the William Cone building in its entirety. It does not offer the benefits of consolidation because we're still at 5 schools. Addresses some of the programmatic issues at the 2 renovated schools and ideally all of them at the new school, and likely requires a new site for the new William Cone building.
Great. Now we're going to go on to option C.
Yep. So again, we've got 2 kind of C variations. Major renovations at Bodenham and Harpswell. Construct a new addition at Woodside. So the idea is you close William Cone, you build an addition. Instead of on a different site, you build that addition on Woodside. So you don't have to buy land, and now you've reduced the portfolio from 5 to 4 schools. So it replaces school building in the worst condition, offers limited benefits of consolidation, but it gets you down to 4 schools. Topsom loses one of its 2 community schools, addresses some of the programmatic issues at Harpswell and Bodenham, and ideally the conditions, at least in what you've displaced from Williams Cone over to Woodside. In C2, you make major renovations at Bodenham and construct a new addition at Woodside, which would combine both William Cone and Harpswell. There's several considerations with this. It closes 2 schools, but it's a potentially quite a large addition at Woodside, and our first reaction was it may be causing, to the point of causing traffic issues in that neighborhood. And then when you start thinking about Harpswell, Harpswell geographically is the furthest kind of district outside town, so it increases the travel distance for those younger kids into Topsom. And Harpswell and Topsom both lose a community school with the consolidation. Addresses some of the programmatic issues at 1 school and addresses all of them at 2.
All right, option D.
D1, can you still hear me? Yeah. Construct 1 new school, renovate Harpswell, and close both William Cone and Bodenham. So the idea is those 2, we build a new school somewhere in between Bodenham and Harpswell on a new site. You would keep Harpswell, which is the most remote school. So closes 2 schools, maintains Harpswell. Could be an expensive option due to a site procurement and site work for a rather large school. Bodenham and Topsom both lose a community school and addresses some of the programmatic issues at 1 and all of them at 2. And then D2, construct 1 new school, close Bodenham, Harpswell, and Williams Cone. So this is probably the most dramatic option of all of them. So you close 3 schools, could be an expensive option due to site procurement and site work, and obviously it's the largest new school building. And those 3 towns lose their community schools, but it addresses all your programmatic issues and needs for those 3 schools for the long term.
And option E.
Yeah, these are the last 2 options. Move Bodenham to an addition at Bowden. So this is kind of a bunch of smaller projects. Move Bodenham to Bowden, which are fairly geographically close. move Harpswell and Williams Cone to an addition at Woodside, and close Bodenham, Harpswell, and Williams Cone. So it's another option to get down to 2 schools in the portfolio without doing one new big project. So closes 3 schools, avoids the cost of a new site. Bodenham, Harpswell, Topsom lose the community schools. Address some of the programmatic issues at all 3 schools. In another version, E2, move Bodenham to an addition at Bowden, move William Cone to an addition at Woodside, and major renovations at Harpswell, close Bodenham and William Cone. This closes 2 of the schools, avoids the cost of a new site. Bodenham and Topsom both lose community schools, and addresses some of the programmatic issues at 1 and all of the programmatic issues at 2. So that's a lot. And we've got a slide coming up that kind of graphically shows this a little bit easier to read.
This is the same that's on the board over here. So you have the existing facilities on the left-hand side. And under B1, there's a little legend in the upper right corner. An existing school is the blue dot, and addition is the pink dot. Close a school is the gray dot. New school is the green dot, and the yellow is a renovation. So what this is trying to show you graphically is pretty much what we just went through, but in an overview of all the options. So B1 are 3 major renovations at the 3 schools. And then B2 has the renovations with the addition at William Cone, and kind of so on and so forth. Where you start to see arrows essentially means that those students are moved to that school that has either a new build or an addition. Keeping in mind essentially what you're trying, this long-term solution is really looking at the best use of your facilities to deliver education to your students going forward into the future. And so weighing in all of the considerations and parameters, both programmatically, from an operation cost standpoint, from a improvement cost standpoint, that's what all of these are trying to look at, is kind of what is the right fit. What we would like to know from all of you tonight, we're going to put up a sticky note, a big, large sticky paper all around the room here. And we're going to give folks Post-it notes. And we just want your considerations on each of these options. Kind of what are the things that come to mind that maybe weren't listed under the considerations tonight for this option, or were listed and you want to emphasize. And so really, what are those things when you start to hear we're going to either renovate, have 3 major renovations, or an extreme case where we're closing several schools and building a new building and doing some additions, or just building a new building. Really just want to hear your considerations, and we can put those up on the Post-it note. And I don't know that we have a chat feature tonight for those online. If we do, that'd be a good way to kind of have folks just input, or you can email in your considerations that we can add to the list for tonight. Before I do that, are there any questions on the general options that we've outlined that you need answered before you can provide your thoughts on considerations? Yeah.
This is a generic question seeking a generic answer. For some of these sites, it's easier to imagine building a new school or building an addition. Some of these sites, I would imagine, would be challenging to build a new school with the existing structure. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that, like where you're looking at major renovations, say at Harpswell or Bodenham, or 2 of the buildings that I have in mind. What is the impact in terms of time while that renovation is going on? In other words, how do we practically keep instructing kids while that renovation project is going on?
Really, really good question. And we talked generally about this when we reviewed the options the first time. And it will be something that we're going to look at. And there's 2 scenarios when you're doing this. We've done a lot of occupied renovations and additions. Let's take this scenario, hypothetically, where you're adding an addition typically we'll phase it to where we build the addition first, and we start to use that as what we call swing space. And so we build that, we literally take a portion of the school and swing it over there for them to operate while we go in and do renovations within sections of the building. The other way to go about this is if you are doing mostly renovation, a lot of times need to bring portables on site to be able to do that. And so those would be the two scenarios. Some of these, as we mentioned in the considerations, you may really want to think about a new site for some of those builds. So we tried to note that if we felt that it may be, the site might be constrained to that. And so a good question. And I think that generically answers what you're looking for. Yes.
Or is it strictly in-building repairs?
The question, in case folks didn't hear, is do we think that the renovations include additions, or is the work happening generally within the existing shell of the building? Is that accurate? You want to answer that one, Steve?
Yeah, I believe some of this is from memory. And it kind of follows up on the first question. Bodenham and Harpswell, the worst parts of those buildings, I think I said previously, is in the middle. So I think on Harpswell, the challenge there is the handicapped accessibility at the levels. And I believe in the initial report, we had put Austin there to kind of get rid of the middle part of Harpswell and rebuild that portion so that it could all be on the right level. Because you've got classrooms that you have to go down to each classroom at a different elevation from the corridor, which is impossible from a handicap standpoint. On Bodenham, I believe we had cost in there to do a heavy kind of gut renovation of the center portion of Bodenham to extend the life of that building.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes.
Lead levels, like K2 and 3-5 for the elementary schools?
It's a good question. Something that could be considered as part of this. So if that's a consideration you want to explore, please, by all means, put it on the chart. Yep. Yep. No, I think, and for those that didn't hear, the question was, has there been consideration for I'll call it reconfiguration of grade levels? And so as of right now, these options don't take that into consideration. However, that could be something if you want to put up on the board for consideration moving forward. Other questions? Yes. We're getting you a mic. Thank you.
For the options that are suggesting a new site, have locations been proposed or discussed?
They have not been proposed. So we would generally look at what available sites would be, make sense geographically. I know that there's been a cursory review of what might possibly be available out there, but there has not been hey, this would be the site if that were to happen.
So no discussion about eminent domain.
That has not come up in any of our conversations. All great questions. So if there are questions as we're going, by all means, we're here as you're doing this. We're going to post these up. We'll walk around and give folks Post-it notes so you can start to write down your considerations and just put them on the option that you want. And we'll probably take about 10, 15 minutes to do that. And then we'll kind of read back some of the stuff we heard or see. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take it back to our office and we're going to organize it all to be able to report out on what we heard from tonight. So we're going to start to come around. Steve's going to post these up. I'm going to walk around with some Post-its. You want to walk around with pens? I do not know how to get to the raised hand, so I don't.
So, yeah.
There you go. If you need more, by all means, please let me know. You're welcome.
Real quick for anybody online watching, we unfortunately don't have a way to interact with the Zoom
Options.
piece. So we do see that there are some questions or people have raised their hands. I apologize, but unfortunately we can't go to those. I will offer up
If you need
my
more,
email. I'm
just let me
Ryan
know.
Larson. You can email me at larsonr@link75.org with a question, and I will see if we can integrate it into the discussion this evening.
Well,
And apologize for that. Again, it's Larson, LARSEN,
same
at
password.
link75.org.
Oh, thank you. Here, I'll just give you that whole pack. You want to separate that for me. If you need more, let me know. You guys gonna share? Yeah, put it on there. We're gonna collect them all so we can respond to them. I would ask that you write it on the sticky and then put it on you have one already? You have some? You have some? You have some? There you go. Did you get some? Okay, perfect. Anybody not have a sticky note? You're welcome. Yeah, there you go. There you are. Anybody not have any? See an empty seat? Yes. Anyone not have a pen? All right, so the way these Post-its are set up, probably you can't see from where you're at. We have B1, B2, B3 on this side. And then starting over here, we have C1, C2, D1, D2, E1, E2. Sounds like I'm speaking a different language. Yeah, if folks run out. And then the same information is on that board up there. Yeah, if folks want me to go back and show some of the considerations that were already done, by all means, I can do that too. Yeah.
She's wondering about staff considerations. Is it okay? Should I just reply? I mean, that wasn't a piece of it at this point.
Wondering about staff considerations. What does that mean?
Yeah, I'm guessing here. Yeah, it could be either.
Yeah.
Addition, reduction.
I gotcha. That would be looked at.
Hasn't been in the discussion.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'll give folks some time to respond here. I'll turn off my. So something I'm going to do just as a request, I'm going to put the Slido back up for those that wanted to keep doing that. So I'm going to hop off this page for just a second so that folks can see that. There was some folks back home that wanted to be able to weigh in. I would encourage you to go up and look at the board that has the same information that was just up on the slide. I'm going to start with this poll here. If folks remotely or in the audience want to continue to fill this out, we'll leave this up for a minute or so. They can without the this. They should be able to. Oh, I see what you're saying. I got you. Yeah, that's a really good idea. So if folks at the end or even on here want to provide their input on, oops, I apologize, on the options and let us know, B1 consideration and tell us what the consideration is. You can enter it into this as well by going to this QR code. And then we will add it to the overall feedback. I just ask that you please note which option so that we can accurately transcribe that. Okay. Yeah. So Heidi just mentioned that she's pushing this out through Parent Square right now as well, with all the information on our presentation, as well as this QR code. So you can look for it there also if folks need to follow along with what the options are and be able to reach more people than were able to participate tonight. But I can see right now actively there's 3, 4 folks putting information in. 7, it's quickly increasing. So general information, you don't need to tell me what option it is, but if it's a consideration you want us to take in that we haven't mentioned or you want to emphasize, please indicate which option your comment is in response to. I see lots of folks up at the board looking at the options, which is great. And there's no limit on the number of considerations. And feel free to chat with your neighbor, or your community members here on your thoughts if you want to kind of bounce ideas off folks. So I know this is a lot to take in. I'm going to just kind of give folks about 5 minutes or so to pull their thoughts together, and then I'll check in to see if we think we need more time.
Lisa and Steve, I was a little curious about the major renovations without the consideration for any additional building additions. The biggest drawback to those, they don't address the additional programming or space needs. You're just updating that portion of the building, or would it?
Going to be a case specific. So in some of these, depending on the building itself, we could get creative with some of the spaces and find dual use. But you're not going to be able to meet all of the programmatic needs, probably without some level of addition to those buildings. Would you agree with that, Steve? Yeah. Go ahead and turn your mic on.
That's building 376 is across the street from MAM's, and it houses mostly facilities equipment, I believe, tractors and storage, but it was built It was built as a residential building, I think, way back. And so was not built for the purpose it's being used for. Is that accurate description of the building? Enough for the person to know
Yeah,
to be torn down?
yeah, yeah, that's correct. Amy. Yeah, yeah. Building 376 was an old Army barracks building that was turned over to the district many years ago. It's since been repurposed to act as the facilities, grounds operations building, and it does not serve its purpose well.
That we hadn't mentioned earlier is if we can find a better bus garage, then the current bus garage would make a much better landscape building.
Yeah, great point, Steve. Thank you. The other thing I'll mention about 376 too is it's a challenging building that we've looked at, could it be repurposed to be something else that could fit an educational need? And after studying the site and the building, it's really a challenging building to do much of anything with. So repurposing it would definitely be challenging.
I really appreciate all the comments that are coming in on the Slido here, and see lots of folks continuing to put them on there. Lots of great thoughts, and we look forward to summarizing all of those and being able to provide responses to those.
Do you want to speak to the forecasting you guys have done on population? Because there is a question up here about growing towns. I know you guys did a study or
Yes.
had a study done.
Yep. So as part of this, we had an enrollment projection done, and looking at, as well as demographic study, as part of this analysis. I hate to work from memory, so I want to, in a minute here, I'm going to pull up the information so that we can look at that firsthand. So I'm going to hold my answer on that one. And once we have some of the activity done here with collecting information, we'll pull that up from, I think it was our last facilities committee meeting. But just to speak to that, it does look at any permitted projects or things that have been built. One of the things to take into consideration is when there are new builds in a community, it really, number of students, a lot of times is driven by number of bedrooms. Not always, but generally what they find statistically is a 3-bedroom typically has students as part of that. A 2-bedroom is variable and a 1-bedroom typically does not. And so in that study, they give the data that they use to analyze that. They also look at live births. So this is looking at how many students have been born that haven't yet entered school. And it also looks at your trends for what's called in-migration, and that is simply families, the number of families that historically have moved into the district versus the out-migration, which is historically the number of families and folks that move out of the district. And so all that data is considered in there. That was my 5-minute timer. I just want to do a check-in. Just raise a hands if folks need more time to get their considerations written down and put up on the boards. Yep. What? So I think your question was the main school. How does the main major capital school construction program play into moving forward with new builds? Really good question. So that application process, there was one that was just done in 90, well, let me go back. The last round, which they are still planning projects off of, had 74 applications and they funded 9 projects. This next round that just came out, they had 99 applications. They have not finalized the priority list yet. And at the same time, the state is heavily looking at how the program moves forward. I think you've probably seen a lot of the news about different things they're considering. Right now, that I don't believe any of your schools are on that application list right now. So you would have to be on the application list that would come out in about 7 years. It comes out every 7 years. And then you would have to be in the top, usually top 5 to 10, depending on where they go with funding. That may all change depending on what they come out with in the beginning of the year as to whether they have a change to the allocation of funds. Right now, if you were to apply and you were awarded a project similar to this school here that we're standing in, was a state-funded school, you have the opportunity for it to be almost 100% funded by the state. That is unique to the state of Maine. There's not too many states that do that. A lot of them have a cost share built in. So that's something that they may end up doing. We don't know if that is or is not the direction they'll go, to where there's a percentage that they will fund and then there's a percentage that has to be done by taxpayers. The thinking behind that is hopefully that will allow the funds to go further to more communities. But that is in very, very active conversation at the state level right now. We did just help them redo all their guidelines for that program. So this next round, we anticipate to stay on the same guidelines and the same kind of funding as they have been. But again, that could all change depending on what I think it's a commission comes out with as their recommendations at the end of this year. So right now, these are looking at essentially utilizing local funds or other SRRF, which is school revolving renovation funds that you can apply for through the state to be able to do portions of projects or things related to safety and security and indoor air quality. And what's the other one I'm missing? ADA. Those are kind of the top funded ones right now. You can do up to $2 million over 5 years for each building. So that's another mechanism you could use towards some of this. But until you are on a state-funded list, would you be considered for the major capital projects? That was a really long answer, but did I address your question? Or their question, sorry, that you pointed out. Hopefully I addressed that question.
Yeah, the state is taking this application really seriously. And last year they did a study or a survey of 500 or 600 public schools in Maine.
They pretty much surveyed all of the
They have a
public schools.
survey of all the information about every school. But to give you kind of a reality check on where they are, the last time they did 9 schools, two of the schools on the top of the preliminary list right now burned. One of them's burned flat to the ground and the other one's in majorly gone condition.
Yeah, so on this recent list, the top 2 are up there due to fire. So it's pretty much dire needs are at top. All right, any more time needed for considerations of the options here? Okay, I'm just gonna generally pick, maybe you wanna address this one, B3, why a new site, Steve? And we're not saying it has to be a new site, we're just saying consideration may be given to a new site. But
Yeah, and it kind of follows up on someone had mentioned things about better and worse sites. So Bowdoin is a nice site, Woodside's a pretty nice site, but there's kind of concerns about added traffic there. Bowdenham is a very tight rural site. Woodside, we talked about, is a very tight urban site with limited access. And Harpswell, it's not really an issue with the site. It's just the most remote school in the district. So when we're looking for a space to build a new school, whether it's a school for 1, 2, or 3 of these schools, we may be able to fit a smaller one on an existing site. But I think if we looked at building a new school for 3 to replace 3 of these schools, it's going to be large enough that we would need one new larger site. We looked quickly on the site that we're on right now. We don't think there's quite room here for another school, but that really hasn't been looked at in depth.
All right, I'm gonna just do a quick kind of readout, and I'm not gonna read everything, so don't take this as this is the summary of these, but I'm just gonna pinpoint a couple of things. So B1, there's a couple comments on here regarding maintains the character of the district, less dramatic impact, questions about whether climate control would be included in the renovations, And there is a comment about it seems to kick the can down the road. And then just somebody putting in B1, C1, and C2 are kind of generally their preference. B2, another comment is about all B options are, the comment is all penny wise and pound foolish. So essentially what that means is it makes sense because it's a short term or maybe a less costly, but doesn't take, it doesn't address the long-term needs is what I would take from that. So in the long-term B2 or B3, most community members they've spoken to do not support closing a community school. A lot about community schools are at the heart of the community. Questions about WCS, could a second floor be added to the Williams wing instead of using more ground space? This is something that comes up all the time in options. If there is an existing building that is one story, it's not that you can't add a second level, but it is very costly to add a second level. And this is why. When a building is built, it is built under the codes to which exist at that time. And it is structured to hold the snow loads of a roof, not the live loads of a second floor. And so what we would have to do, and it has been done before, but again, it's very costly, is build an exoskeleton. So essentially we have to build a new exterior wall around the existing exterior wall, create a floor over the roof, and then build that second floor on top. So it becomes pretty costly. It's not impossible, but it becomes very costly. So just something to keep in mind as we're starting to think about. I know in general, it seems like, oh, we can just add a second floor, we'll solve all these problems. There's a little bit more nuance than that.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Lisa, that we did a project a few years ago on a rather new building that was designed to add a second floor on. And the codes had changed such in 15 or 20 years that we essentially had to build a new building around the building below it, and not an ideal situation.
I'm just going to pick a couple here on B3. So, a comment here about a school of 700 kids they feel might be too big. Some don't like this option. Others like it because it retains the community schools. All right. And again, we'll do an overall summary of these, but just for the essence of time, I want to just kind of pick a couple here to point out. C1, combining WCS and WES is a lot of kids. Seems like a workable option, though design would have to maintain small school feel. So that's a good point. One of the things to keep in consideration is as a schools start to come together, a lot of things you can do to maintain that scale for the kids of a small school is what's called a school within a school. And this is done a lot in schools, and essentially it looks at creating small communities within the larger school community. This is done, a great example would be the Wentworth School in Scarborough. It's essentially set up to be actually four different communities within that school. And they actually have, different color branding for those communities. And those students stay together within that school, within that community as they progress through that school. It allows them to share a lot of the core spaces. There are other examples as well. So just something to keep in mind that there are things that can be done with design. Jumping over to C2, concerned about commutes for students and pretty much bus timeframes. Concern about social/cultural impact of Harpswell students being grouped with much larger population of Topsom students. D1, somebody is advocating, please do not choose this option. We need our community schools in Boningham. Keep community schools. One of the questions is about implications of school board seats based on enrollment. So I don't think we have taken that into consideration yet thus far. D2, concern that's too large of an elementary school, advocating to keep community schools. Trying to see if there's anything different. Generally, that's what that is. A note here between the D and E's. D and E's are the most dramatic and not really worth consideration is a comment. E1, asking if there is space at Woodside for such a large addition. And then advocating to keep the community schools. What about before and after care when combined? And emphasizing that that is a big need. So that's something we need to keep in consideration. And then E2, other concerns about the size and number of kids in a school, advocating to keep the community schools. And then E2 appears to be a decent alternative to C1. E2, this option appears to address the most overall issues across 3 broad geographical areas, but might be pricey. So those are all varying comments. I think we're starting to hear some themes throughout these, but we'll summarize those and pull those together. One thing I want to pull up on here is the next question we have for everybody, and this is non-binding, but we just want a general feel from the group here tonight and those that are online, kind of how you would prioritize these options. What are those that how would you rank these? In the meantime, we're going to try and pull up some of the demographic studies. I think, Steve, if you can open your computer and pull up the last presentation while we do this. All right, so oops, wrong way. We are going to go this way. Okay, public feedback poll prioritizing of options. Again, this is non-binding. This is generally just to get a sense with the information you have today, what your general feelings are. And we'll continue to provide answers to the different questions. But just want to get a sense of the options. This is the chart again. I would encourage folks to maybe take a snapshot of this, take a picture so that as you're filling out the prioritization, you can refer back to it. So I'll leave this up here for just a minute. And for those at home that want to take a screenshot, because once we go into the poll itself, you won't have this visual if you are at home. See some folks still taking pictures, so I'll wait just a minute. All right, I'm going to move on. All right, so how would you prioritize the options? So essentially B1, B2, B3, C1, C2, D1, so on and so forth. If you can pick your, in priority order, so your highest priority 1, second priority 2, and just same way we did the last poll, if you can provide feedback on all of the options, we just again want to get a pulse check as to where folks are right now. And then take this information as well as the comments that we heard tonight and summarize that so that that can be another data point for us as we start to review these options going forward. So I'll give folks time to do this. This is the last exercise for tonight, and then we'll have some closing remarks. But I'll give folks, it's going to take a little while to prioritize all these, I can imagine. So we'll give folks about 5 minutes to fill this out while we look for the enrollment information. Yeah, so one thing too to think about, if there is an option that you feel hasn't been represented up there that you have thought of, by all means, write it on a Post-it note and put it up on the boards. So definitely encourage folks to do that. I see that we have folks still participating in the prioritization here, but we have quite a number that have already weighed in, 38 to be exact. Maybe it's 39, I can't see from the side, 38. And so I'm just going to kind of report out what I see right now. Again, non-binding, this is based on the 38 or 39 folks that might still be participating. But we're seeing advocation for B3 as kind of the priority, but we're in general seeing that the Bs are in those that are weighing in at the top, followed by C1, E2, and D1. And I'm not going to report out below that because obviously then it goes off from there. But we will summarize what we're hearing from folks on this, as well as the boards themselves. Again, this information is going to be pushed out. Heidi's going to put it out on, is it Parent Square? Is that right? Parent Square, Facebook as well. Our goal is to hear from as many people as possible. We want to get a good sense from the community as to what folks are feeling and thinking. Because we need your input for this to be successful. What I'm going to end with is we did do the enrollment demographic study, and I'm going to share the stats with that. We should have put it in this PowerPoint, and I'll probably add it before we send it to Heidi to post here, or maybe we can do an amendment to that so everybody has it. And we're going to just show you in general. I'm going to summarize it high level, and I'm going to show you the data. We're going to plug Steve's, or actually, I will pull it up. Now that I think about it, I have access to it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second. But in general, yes, I'm going to keep this poll active. Sorry, I'm trying to do too many things at once here. In general, we are seeing maybe an uptick in population, but not in student population. So we're seeing more people in the community, but not of the ages of school children. And we're seeing a decline in the number of students. And we will show that to you in just a second here. Is that the 25th? Yep, all right, let me open that up real quick. Stop sharing while I pull that up. What slide was that, Steve? '20, 21, 22, okay. All right, let me share my screen again here. So bear with me just a second. We're going to share this. And all right. So enrollment demographic study. So NASDAQ, which is a company that does enrollment projections and demographic reports. Summary of the key points from them: they review the district and municipal records. They look at DOE enrollment data. They looked at US Census Bureau population trends, state birth rate data, housing sales data, conversations with local realtors and HUD trends, and new residential construction starts. Keep in mind that enrollment projections are most accurate from the 3 years from today, from today, 3 years out, and that is because the students have been born that will be coming into the school district. Beyond that, it is based on projections based on historic data. So in summary, this is what we're seeing. 1990 to 2020, there was population growth in the towns. You can see that there was different levels of population growth. The median age, however, has increased between 2000 and 2023, meaning people are aging in place and retiring in an area, retiring in the area, reducing the number of children in the school system. And so you can see the average age decreased in all four of the areas. Population trends show a decrease in 0 to 18-year-olds between 2013 and 2023. And then town births between 2009 and 2019 have also decreased. The MSAD75 birth to kindergarten relationship. So this is really looking at how many kids are born that end up going into kindergarten. The district typically enrolls slightly more or the same number of kindergartners than the number of recorded births. So 97% of those born here end up going to school here. Real estate trends show the number of family households increased in Boatingham, but decreased in the other three communities. The numbers of persons living along 65 plus has increased in every community except for Boatingham. There are some planned housing projects that will have small impacts on the expected population. So in summary, the 3-year projection total student enrollment is projected to decrease by 169 students. And the 3-year projection K through 5 enrollment is projected to decrease by 126 students. The projections do go out 10 years, but again, we focused on those 3 years because they're the most accurate, but you can imagine that it continues to show a decline from there. So that is the data from that projection, and it's a very thorough report that they have done. So that kind of puts that into context as to what we're seeing for the population trends, historic as well as projected based on the data of the things that we reviewed on the first slide.
Do you have the projections by town?
We do. I don't have it with me tonight, but we can provide that summary. All right, so that is the end of our presentation for this evening. We really thank everybody for coming out and participating both in person and online. I'll turn it back to Heidi if you have any closing remarks.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming out tonight. And for those online, this is phenomenal participation and really helping us to move forward. So thank you.
Do keep an eye out for the 3rd community forum. I don't think we have the date set for. Do we have that one set? I just want to make sure that we put that out. We did set it, so let me make sure that I get that here. Okay.
Next community forum will be November 17th at 6 o'clock here in the forum again.
Okay. So November 17th here in this location. Please, we invite you to come back and learn the progress that we've made based on what we've heard this evening, as well as from other stakeholder groups. And please continue to let people know. Word of mouth is by far the best way to inform people about these. So we appreciate you sharing these with your social circles and bringing folks along with you. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night.